You're in coastal Wilmington, North Carolina, right? Does it flood? Well, we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about the risk associated with flooding in our area. We're going to break down the two different types of flooding that happens, and we're going to break down the three different flood zones that we have in our area. A lot of people believe that just because you're coastal, we have flood zones. Well, guess what? It is, I'm going to pull up a map here. Here is a map of, central, eastern North Carolina, and as you can see, everything in the brown area is in some sort of flood zone. So as you can see, flood zones are really everywhere. So we're going to break it down into our area in Wilmington, and we're going to talk about the different types of flooding that occur. So as you can see here in our area, we have a set of islands that basically face east, and then we have a set that face south. So a lot of times when we get storms, we do get hurricanes on the East Coast. So one of the things that causes flooding is a thing called storm surge. A storm surge is where a large mass of weather comes in, a hurricane, and it pushes bodies of water into these areas here. Now, the most people that are at risk for a storm surge or the people on the Barrier Islands, such as Wrightsville, Oak Island, Holden Beach. And a lot of times it depends on whether it's a full moon, what type of tide is it going to be, high tide, and the angle that the storm approaches. So that is one risk that we do have in this area is storm surge from hurricanes. The other type of flooding is just due to rainfall. And as you can see here, that's where you get a lot of different flood zones all across the country. So it depends on, amount of rainfall, and then does water have somewhere fast to escape to? Sometimes in this scenario, it's actually better to be on the coast where water can escape. So we're going to look at Wilmington. There are three distinct flood zones in our area. As you can see here, let me just zoom in. We'll pick on Oak Island here for a second. As you can see here, you have a very light bluish green line. That is called the VE zone. That is your high risk. It stands for high risk for flood and high winds. Okay, so here are all the VE zones that you'll see. Usually your ocean front, your stuff at the mouth of the Cape Fear River, anything that touches the intercoastal waterway for the most part, but it really boils down to elevation for the most part and location. As the next step back is a flood zone called AE. Now, AE is a very broad type of flood zone. So it could be to where it's they call it the 100-year plain. So you have a chance of having standing water on your property every 100 years is basically what it's saying. So if you see here in the brown area, these are all areas that are in the VE zone. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a second, the breakdown of, the AE zone. We'll talk about the different flood and premiums for those areas. Now, once you get past AE, you're in zone X. And as you can see, here's a Barrier Island, Oak Island, and a lot of it is in zone X, which means it's not even in a flood zone. That means that if you own a home, you are not required to carry flood insurance. Now, if you own a home in these other areas, you're going to be required to carry flood insurance if you have a mortgage on that property. So, VE is going to be your most expensive type of insurance because it's high risk for high winds and also flooding. Now, if we break down into the AE zone, which is the brown zone here, they base their premiums on elevation and then how your home sits on the property. So I always advise all my clients, if you're going to buy in these zones, and there's a lot of great properties that are in AE zones, don't get me wrong, but a lot of times you're going to have to build your house on pilings to get your house out of that flood zone, so to speak. So you look at Carolina Beach, Curie Beach here, you can see a lot of that island. It's not even in a flood zone. But for the people that fall into these areas, like in the basin down behind Carolina Beach, the insurance companies are going to base their premium on the elevation of your property. Now, how do you know your elevation of your property? Well, That's a good point. So when you get a survey, it's always good to get a survey. And when you do a survey, you want to get what's called an elevation certificate. It's an extra step and an extra expense to do it. But if you have a newer elevation certificate, your premium may be lower. And for any more details, if you have a property that you're looking at and you're like, gosh, I don't know if it's on the line, off the line, give us a call. We have guys that we work with insurance companies. They can give us an exact quote of what it will cost in those areas. And if you want to get flood insurance outside of those areas when you're in Zone X, you can. It's super cheap to do so. So I hope this kind of explains the different, flood zones that we have, the different risk. But honestly, that's why you really need, you're down here looking at properties, you need to have a local agent that's been here for some time that understands the different areas. There are some areas that do have issues that aren't on maps and whatnot. You also want to look at, if you're buying in a community, the storm drainage system, how it drains. So finding an agent in the area that's local, that knows the deal, is definitely going to hedge your bet against the risk of finding a property that's in a flood zone. So if you have any questions, if you have property that you want me to take a look at and like kind of give you a risk assessment, give us a call, reach out, contact us, and hopefully this has been beneficial, educational, and we hope to see you on the next update. Have a great day.